Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this interesting topic. I am Gunilla NIELSEN, Head of Clinical Trial at the Swedish Medical Product Agency, as we have heard before, and as such, we have had a great interest in looking into performing clinical trials decentralized. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about the project that we just recently finished. So the project we have been working on is between 2020 and 2021. We actually started just a couple of weeks before the pandemic hit us in Sweden. So it's not necessarily a project that is risen out of the pandemic, but it was really just in time we started this project, since the pandemic situation also have forced and perhaps made it a bit more as a burning platform to investigate the possibility to utilize decentralized tools and measures to perform clinical trials. But we carried out a feasibility study and a subsequent project about patient-centric decentralized clinical trials during this period. And the aim was to establish conditions for how interventional clinical trials can be carried out in Sweden. And we also would like to thank the Swedish Innovation Authority for partly financing the project. Just to set the setting right, this is how we have defined the centralized investigation of clinical trials. It can be described as a method for remotely and/or with the help of digital tools collecting data within the framework of the trial. It can be consent data, randomization, inclusion, but also safety and efficacy data for the investigation of medicinal products in the trial. Trials that contain both decentralized and traditional elements are often referred to as hybrid trials. So the project, why and how? We would like to increase the knowledge and the predictability about the conditions for conducting this type of clinical trials within Sweden. We wanted to see if more patients should be offered the opportunity to be included in a clinical trial regardless of where they live. Sweden is not a country where we have very many inhabitants, but we have quite some distance, geographic distance between where people actually live and the university or the big hospitals are located. We would also like to investigate whether this could increase the number of clinical trials. As part of the how, we really scrutinized regulations, guidelines, and established practices where we analyzed both internally and in workshops, nationally and also within the EU, to understand if there were any hurdles and how those hurdles in that case could be overcome. We had also several advice meetings free of charge as part of the financing we had from the Innovation Agency regarding this decentralized element in investigation of clinical trials. As part of the project, we also invited sponsors to participate with actual clinical trials as pilots. So let's talk a little bit about the pilots in the study. They were 5 interventional clinical trials with centralized elements that we followed in the project. The decentralized elements in one or more of these clinical trials included remote electronic consent, home sampling administered by the patient himself or herself, remote visits within the framework of the clinical trial, medical device solutions to capture symptoms of possible side effects, distribution of investigational medicinal products, and medical device solutions to register compliance to treatment. The 5 interventional clinical trials were spread over all phases, phase 1 to 4, in the development of of drugs, and also both inpatient and outpatient diseases were investigated in these clinical trials. And we have had a lot of questions about what kind of studies are beneficial to do decentralized, if there are any particular phase or any particular disease. Or but our answer from where we are standing at the moment in terms of our understanding is that it doesn't come to the particular phase or the particular disease. It's more an individual discussion and decision based on the nature of the individual clinical trial. So they can be utilized in all phases. It comes to how the trial is set up and what kind of digital and decentralized tools are possible to utilize. The project deliverables, we have decided not to write a guidance document. We wanted rather to be more hands-on, to give concrete advice to those that actually are about to apply or to plan for decentralized clinical trials. So we have set up a dedicated website to decentralized clinical trial, where we continuously update with question and answers in support of the centralized clinical trials. We also, as part of the project, have interviewed sponsors, investigators of the pilot studies, just to preempt the best practice and to summarize those in favor of those that would like to do the same or to benefit from others' experiences. So at the website, you can also find written summaries of the interviews made with sponsors and investigators. We can say that as regulators, we are more confident and knowledgeable about the DCT approach after this project. We were quite keen to see this started because we had a suspicion that sometimes sponsors have an idea of that it is the regulators or the regulations that are the hurdles that you need to overcome in order to do clinical trials in a new way. And therefore, we really wanted to start this as a regulators in order to take away that understanding from the sponsors. And we can see by the questions we get and also all the discussions and dialogues we have with stakeholders now that it's more of a partnership when we talk about centralized trial rather than a persuasion from the sponsors that this is a good thing. So we have accomplished something, I think, in the way we talk to each other over this kind of clinical trials. We can also see that there is an increased number of applications containing centralized clinical trial methods in the studies. So what can we say to you that are in the progress of putting a clinical trial, a decentralized clinical trial up for approval? Well, planning is really essential, and all the decentralized steps in a clinical trial requires really a careful and study-specific risk-benefit assessment. And you really need to think all the eventualities through before deciding on which direction you would like to go. We are also in an agreement that the reasons for performing decentralized elements must be based on a scientific basis and may, for example, be an increased opportunity to include the relevant study population, collection of additional relevant data, reduce risk or burden for patients. It could never be only cost efficiency as a reason to introduce decentralized elements. It needs to be part of the nature and benefit the patient and the risk benefit of the whole clinical trial in order for us to to approve these elements. The same requirements regarding ICH, GCP, GMP, and all other standards, and the scientific value of the study and the safety of the subjects apply to decentralized trials as to traditional trials. The investigator's overall responsibility in the study applies, even if different approaches take place at locations other than the trial site itself. Still, the investigator's oversight that we are assuming that the investigator still keeps. That is really core of the performance of a clinical trial. Decentralized elements are considered as new approaches. Therefore, we encourage sponsors to describe the implementation of these steps in more detail compared to traditional study protocols, just for the regulators' possibility of understanding each step in the process and how they are conceived by you. The use of decentralized elements should be justified and considered in the protocol's risk-benefits assessment. And what will happen now, since the project ended just before Christmas? Well, we will continue to have a supporting role for the issues over which the agency has direct influence at the national level and work with decentralized clinical trials on an EU level. We know that there are a lot of EU projects and also a clinical trial facilitation group where the clinical trial agency experts are working, have a subgroup discussing just decentralized trials, and we also know that there might be guideline under production, and we are participating in that activity in order to share our experience. We will also continue to provide regulatory guidance and decentralized elements in the clinical trials. Don't be shy. Get in contact with us through our web page. The project leader, Stina Lövling, is still working with centralized clinical trials. And also do visit our website, where you have all these question and answers reflecting all the various steps in the planning and performance of the clinical trial. Thank you.